Hi, in this video, I am going to go over how to do today's lesson assignment for our introduction to the Chesapeake Bay. And so, what we're looking at on my screen right now is the assignment. And so, if you have gotten to this video, then you have found the assignment. And so, I'm just going to read these directions so that we all know how to complete this assignment. So, the directions say that this assignment contains two attachments. First, there is a resource right here. And second, there is your assignment right here. Follow the steps below to complete. Number 1, analyze the attached slide of the Chesapeake Bay food web before settlers, that's this first slide, to learn about organism interactions in this ecosystem before the area was settled and large-scale fishing occurred. Our second step says that we're going to answer the questions on our copy of the Chesapeake Bay Food Web assignment slide, and that we'll click Turn In to submit our completed work. We can see that there is a rubric for this assignment for how we'll be scored for our engagement. So again, there are two attachments. First, I'm going to open the Chesapeake Bay Food Web. And when I open this, I can see a slide that I just have view access to. So there's nothing for you to edit here. This is just for you to view. And we can see this complex food web of our Chesapeake Bay. It does tell us in this yellow box to click the zoom button, which is in the top left, and go to 100% so that we can read the Chesapeake Bay food web more easily. Again, to enlarge, all I did was go to the magnifying glass, the zoom icon in the top left, and I clicked it, and then I went to 100%. And now that I can read the food web more clearly, I'm just going to take a minute to analyze it and make sure I understand what I'm looking at. I've got all the way down at the bottom of my food web, microbes, floating algae, seagrass, seafloor plants, and then all the way up at my top, I have sharks, seals, alligators, whales. So this is our lowest level, is at the bottom all the way up to our top level. We can see that our food web is color-coded, and so purple indicates tertiary consumers, red, if an organism is red, that is a secondary consumer. Orange is a consumer. Green is a producer. So we've got our producers. Blue are our decomposers. So microbes are decomposers. And then this brownish gray color is our detritus, which just means decaying matter. We also see in our key up at the top that we have some different indicators with our arrows. So our solid large arrows mean that it is a strong interaction between organisms. And then our dotted arrows mean that there is a weak interaction. If the organism is, if the color surrounding the organism's name is solid, then that organism is abundant in the food web. But if the color surrounding the organism is not solid or not filled in, then that organism is rare. And we can also see our indicator for if the organism is extinct. So now that we've explored the key and we've looked at our Chesapeake Bay food web before the area was settled, we're going to go back to our assignment. And we're going to open our second attachment, which is where you are actually going to be completing your lesson today. And in this assignment, we can see that we have one slide that has multiple places for us to type and interact and do our work today. Again, it is probably too small for you to read, so we need to click on the zoom button, which is this button in the top left, the magnifying glass, and we're going to zoom to 100%. And when we do that, now we can scroll through our slide and we can read, scroll left to right to read our resources and up and down. And I'm going to go through how to complete this assignment with you at this time, but I'm not going to do all of it. I'll show you how to do the beginning of each part. So number 1 tells us to examine the food web model before humans lived in the Chesapeake. Notice which species group are abundant, the dark circles, and which species group are rare, the light circles. Color or check the squares on the chart below to indicate which species groups were rare or abundant. And so here we can see our species, and then we have places for us to color. And if I scroll over to these moving arrows, it says drag a green square to indicate whether the groups of species are rare or abundant. So we are just going to drag, and you'll see that you have access to where you can click on that green square and you can drag that down to if it is abundant or rare for that organism. And so I'm going to do this first one with you, and it is whales. And I have to go back up to my tab for the Chesapeake Bay Food Web, and I need to find whales. Looking at my food web, I see whales in the top left corner, and I see that it is solid colored. Remember, if it is solid or dark colored, then that means that that organism is abundant. So whales are abundant. So I'm going to take my green square, and I'm going to carefully drag that down into the abundant row for whales. We're going to do one more together. We'll do sharks. So I'm coming back to my other tab of my food web, and I'm finding sharks. Sharks is also at the top of my food web. I can see it is a dark purple, completely filled in, dark purple, completely filled in. That means that sharks are also abundant. So I'm dragging my green square down to indicate that sharks are abundant. Now you will complete the rest of this activity on your own for the rest of the organisms. Again, you will flip back and forth between your tabs for the Chesapeake Bay Food Web assignment, where you're dragging your green squares to indicate if that organism is abundant or rare. And you will use your tab that has your Chesapeake Bay Food Web, scrolling up and down so that you can find each organism, remembering that if it is a dark color, solid color, that means it's abundant. And if it is not solid, it is not a dark color, then that means that that organism is rare. Once you have completed part 1, then you're ready to scroll down to part 2 of the assignment. Part 2 says, are most species abundant or rare? Which species groups are rare? So based on the data that you collect in part 1, you will answer if the species are abundant or rare. I'll help you get a sentence starter. Most species are, you'll fill in that blank with what you find. Are they abundant or rare? Then you'll answer the second question. Which species groups are rare? The species groups that are rare are, you'll fill that in with the organisms that you find from the food web to be rare. Remember, rare organisms are indicated on our food web by non-solid or lightly colored bubbles around the organism name. Once you've answered parts 1 and 2, then you're ready to do part 3. Part 3 says the species components in the chart above are organized by their role in a food web. Identify the role of components A, B, C, D, and E as being decomposers, producers, consumers, secondary consumers, or tertiary consumers. Include a brief explanation of how each component interacts with the others. At this part, if we need to review, then I encourage you to scroll out to the side and you'll see need to know the levels of the food chain. Watch this video to review, and you can click on the link that is embedded there, and it will take you out to the Brain Pop video that you can watch to review those levels of a food chain. If hearing the words producer, consumer, and decomposer is not something that you remember. So again, that link is right here. You just have to scroll to the right of the document and you can find the review video. I'll do the first one of this part with you. So species group A, scrolling up, I can see that A are my whales, sharks, seals, and alligators. Those groups are categorized in group A, whales, sharks, seals, and alligators. When I go back to my food web, I see whales, seals, sharks, and alligators are all the same color. That color is purple. My key tells me that purple indicates tertiary consumers, which means whales, seals, sharks, and alligators are tertiary consumers. So back in my assignment, I can write the role of group A, whales, seals, sharks, and alligators are tertiary consumers. Now that I have filled in the role, I need to explain what is a tertiary consumer. Tertiary consumers are the top level consumers. They are at the top of the food chain. Again, for these different roles, if you don't remember what each role does, then you should watch the Brain Pop video, which is linked to the right, clicking on the link to see what do those organisms do if you need help finding that description. So you will finish the rest with group B, C, D, and E. Again, you have to scroll up and you can see B, C, D, and E. And you'll look at those organisms on the Chesapeake Bay Food Web, looking at their color. Their color indicates their role in the food web. Once you have completed all 3 parts of the assignment and reviewed your work, then you should turn in to earn your engagement credit. Please reach out and let me know if you have any questions or need any help.